for the evening. I'm sorry about last night. I had a meltdown, so, these things happen. So, it's been a very stressful few weeks. So, I'm not going to say anything about what's going on. I'm just going to say that it's been a very teary couple of days. So, all right, let's talk about what's eaten me. And that is borderline personality disorder. So, if you're afflicted with this condition, then you know exactly where I'm coming from. I'm going to go over and get a good link. I'm going to why don't I share my desktop with you? Really? Let's see if I can figure out how to do that in Twitch Studio Beta. There is a way to share my screen. I'm just trying to figure out how to do that. Maybe tonight is not a good night to learn that. So I'm just going to go and do it. So you won't see what's on my screen because I can't figure out how to get that. I will try to learn it. I'm fairly new to live streaming. I've only been doing this since May. So, it is difficult. But basically, here's where I'm at. This is what I have, so I'm going to go over there and talk about it a little bit. So, it's marked by an ongoing pattern of varying moods, self-image and behavior. These symptoms often result in impulsive actions and problems in relationships. Oh, Lord. People with borderline personality disorder may experience intense episodes of anger, depression, and anxiety that can last from a few hours to days. Most of mine is anxiety. Mood swings and an uncertainty about how they see themselves and their role in the world. Tend to view things in extremes, such as all good or all bad. I'm working on that. I tend not to, they say, their opinions of other people can also change quickly. An individual who is seen as a friend one day may be considered an enemy or traitor the next. I have worked on that many, many years. I don't have that particular problem. I usually just chalk it up to, hey, it may be BPD, or they may be going through something. I tend not to make enemies. I really don't. Efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. I have big problems with that. Rapidly initiating intimate relationships or cutting off communication with someone in anticipation of being abandoned. Well, after years of therapy, I don't usually cut off communication. I just kind of, try to use some good communication techniques. Pattern of intense and unstable relationships with family, friends, and loved ones. Um, uh, well, I don't have that with my daughter. And swinging from extreme closeness and love to extreme dislike and or anger. I used to have problems with that. I don't, you know. There again, I'm all about love. I don't have problems with, suddenly disliking or being angry with someone, because I know that a lot of that is just my emotion going out of control, and I have some good coping mechanisms that I've developed with psychologists to deal with that. So I feel like I'm dealing with that really well. Distorted and unstable self-image or sense of self. Definitely still have big problems with that one. Impulsive and often dangerous behaviors such as spending sprees, substance abuse, reckless driving, and binge eating. About the only thing that I do impulsively is eat, but not binge eating. And, I when I was 19, there was some substance abuse. I haven't done it since. So, I don't do spending sprees. I let my daughter handle the finances. So, if I'm going to spend money, I talk to her because I know I can be impulsive that way. Self-harming behavior such as cutting. I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. Recurring thoughts of suicidal behaviors or threats. That was a problem in my 20s. Haven't had it since I joined my church. So I have purpose. I intense and highly changeable moods, with each episode lasting from a few hours to a few days. I do struggle with that. Chronic feelings of emptiness. Yep. Inappropriate, intense anger or problems controlling anger. I have definitely had that in the past, and my poor older daughter was the victim of that. I still feel a lot of guilt, and she is estranged from me because of it, but because of working with psychologists and working out coping mechanisms, I didn't have much of a problem with that with my younger daughter. Let's see. Difficulty trusting, which is sometimes accompanied by irrational fear of other people's intentions. Yep, I do get irrational fears, but my daughter usually will come and say, Mama, you're doing it again. And I'll say, oh, yeah, you're right. You're right. Feelings of dissociation, such as feeling cut off with oneself, seeing oneself from outside one's body, or feelings of unreality. I used to have big struggles with that when I had the problems with my older daughter. I have not been pushed like that since, so I have not. I do get that sometimes, though. Not everyone with borderline personality disorder experiences every symptom. Very true. And symptoms can be triggered by seemingly ordinary events. True. risk factors, family history, brain factors, environmental, cultural, and social factors, traumatic life events. Oh, yeah, I've had lots of those. And that definitely has made it worse in me. Um, Treatments and therapy has historically been viewed as difficult to treat. But with newer evidence-based treatment, many people with the disorder experience fewer or less severe symptoms and an improved quality of life, and I am living proof of that. Um, you know, a licensed mental health professional, such as a psychiatrist, psychologist, or clinical social worker, experienced in diagnosing and treating mental disorders, can diagnose borderline personality disorder. And I did this when I was applying for disability. I had a psychologist who evaluated me and found the condition. I've been misdiagnosed as a bunch of things, including schizophrenia, which, for about 6 months, that was the diagnosis, and had devastating impacts in my life. I'm not schizophrenic, I'm borderline personality disorders. Totally different. But it can, you know, um, okay, the symptoms of other illness, co-occurring disorders can make it harder to diagnose. Um, Seek and stick with treatment. And I haven't thought about harming myself or had suicidal thoughts since I was in my mid-20s. So really, I, you know, and definitely National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. If you're struggling with suicidal feelings or stuff, please keep that phone number handy or other help number that you might want to use, you know. And always, if you're having feelings like that, you should talk to somebody close to you and tell them what's going on. I have my daughter, and I haven't ever had to talk to her about feelings like that because I haven't had any since I joined my church when I was pregnant with her, and I have had so much hope and so much love given to me that I haven't had any struggles with suicide since then. So, you know, I'm not saying it could never happen, but I try to take care of my mental health. I try to have outlets. That's why I write. That's why you know, my daughter's got a good listening ear, so if I need to talk to her and if I'm feeling like I'm not quite in reality, I can check things out with her and she'll bring me down to earth pretty fast. So definitely, if you've got borderline personality disorder, you really need somebody who can help you calm down. And I'm very fortunate to have my daughter. So, you know, but two examples of psychotherapies used to treat personality disorder include dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT, and cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. I have had cognitive behavioral therapy, and I'm a fan. It really helps me a lot. But typically that's like a 6-week course, and you just do the worksheets and go on that journey of self-discovery, and it's really, really helpful. So if you're struggling with this disorder or a similar disorder, I strongly suggest that you talk to a mental health professional about one of these therapies because they really do help. Because the benefits are unclear, medications are not typically used as the primary treatment for this. And this is what I've told some people who have said, "Hey, girl, you need to be on medication." Well, it's not really effective for my condition. So, and there are side effects. I don't like the side effects, but therapy for caregivers and family members, this is really, having somebody with the disorder can be stressful too. And family members or caregivers may unintentionally act in ways that can worsen their loved one's symptoms. So, involving the family in treatment sessions is a really good idea, and that way you know what, can help your family member with it. If you're on the other side and you've got a family member with it, don't hesitate to get help. We, especially here in the United States, we stigmatize mental health care so much, and a lot of people just don't understand what mental health therapy is all about. They think, oh, they're going to try to read my mind or try to see things that I can't see or whatever. And, basically a therapist is going to let you be in control of your therapy. They're going to suggest some things in their toolbox like CBT or DBT or other things to just generally help your self-esteem and your mental health. So you have choices. If there's something you don't want to do, if you don't like to write, then you're probably not going to be a fan of worksheets. But there are a lot of things that you can try. And the therapist's job is just to say, well, I've got stuff in my toolbox we can try, so let me know what you think you want to try. And we just go, if one thing doesn't work, we try something else. So people shouldn't be scared of therapy. I've been in therapy most of my adult life, and it has really helped me a lot from my younger days. So, I'm saying you don't have to be suicidal to want to talk to a therapist, especially in this time of COVID. Isolation is terrible, and it has mental consequences. So it doesn't mean that you are mentally ill if you're feeling down and you think therapy could benefit you. And if you are mentally ill, if you've got a diagnosis, then it's important to have a therapist handy. Maybe you don't need them right now, but you've got somebody that you can call. The therapist that I worked with on that 6 weeks course of CBT, I was very impressed with her, and I still have her phone number. I can contact her if I feel that I need to, and I'm pretty close to giving her a call. But, it's important to have somebody that you've got a rapport with. And there are different kinds of therapy. So you should read up on the different kinds of therapy and see what kind of therapy goes with your mindset and look for a therapist that practices that kind. So, and there's always clinical trials. I have been on the list for clinical trials for a long time, and I've never found one that was near enough or that I could, transport to. But you never know. I'm not I'm near Chattanooga, but they don't do a lot of clinical trials in Chattanooga. So, well, I go to clinicaltrials.gov and I look through the stuff occasionally. I had to go in for emergency bowel surgery in one of the hospitals in Chattanooga, and they asked, because it was so unusual for somebody to have torsion and not be in excruciating pain, which I wasn't, they asked to do some extra views. And I said, if you want to take a whole bunch of extra views, I am very willing for you to do that, because I always like to help students. So they spent about 15 extra minutes on me taking this view and that view, and I hope it benefited students. So, I'm always willing for residents to come in and with my regular doctor, or because the hospital I use is a teaching hospital. So a lot of times it's not just the doctor. They've got all these medical students following them around and participating in diagnosing. And I'm always open to that, because I feel like it benefits, since I've had so many unusual things going on with me. It's nice for them to have the opportunity to learn from me. So, anyway, and on this document, there are several crisis lines. Please do take advantage of those. I've even got a text one. Cool. And there's more information lines from the NIH. So, there's and there's some free brochures and shareable resources. So, yeah, and there's other research and statistics. So NIH is a really, really good source. And of course, this is NIM. If you remember the cartoon movie, the Disney NIM movie, or was it Disney? But it was so cool. They experimented on these rats and they became intelligent. But NIM was the National Institutes of Mental Health.
I think that was a Don Bluth film.
Oh, Don Bluth. Okay. But it was a really cute movie. I enjoyed it.
Cute?
Well, I thought it was.
Yeah, sure, the owl was very cute.
Well, my daughter disagrees with my opinion, but I enjoyed the movie, so hey. She didn't have to enjoy it. But anyway, I liked the rats. I thought the way they were animated was cute. Anyway, so I don't have anybody asking questions, so we'll just continue on. Let's look at stuff in the news. Let's go to my Twitter account and see what's on Twitter about mental health or physical health or disabilities. Let's see if I can find something about disabilities to share with y'all. I subscribe to all sorts of oh, this is a good one. Let me put a link to this. Okay. I'm looking at the article, Pipeline to Homelessness, Aging Out of the Foster Care System. Definitely a lot of young people in foster care, maybe they had severe emotional problems from abuse or got into substance abuse. So, a lot of young people get really, really messed up, and they end up in the foster care situation. And, this is definitely an issue that we need to look at because, if someone has a mental illness, that is a disability. It's a severe disability. So, you know, um, we need to be helping these people so that they don't end up on the streets because worse things happen to them on the streets. So, definitely, I'm going to read the article here and comment on it. Taking the leap into adulthood is difficult for most people, and boy, was it difficult for me. And youth aging out of the foster care system rarely have any resources or supports at all. They often transition directly into homelessness because they don't have family to take them in or give them any assistance. And it's awful. The homelessness problem is a lot bigger than we really recognize. And we have very faulty means of counting exactly how many people are homeless. Let's see. The foster youth, up until they become of age, they have a place to live, but a lot of times once they become of age, they become homeless. A study of outcomes of former foster youth in the Midwest found that by age 26, between 31% and 46% had been homeless at least once. They are more likely to experience just about every risk factor there is for homelessness. A few of the major ones include trauma and mental illness. They likely were victims of abuse or neglect, then cast off into a government system, and many of them spent their childhood and teenage years moving from home to home, never feeling that they really belong anywhere. That's so sad. And many of these youth go on to face abuse in their foster homes too. Up to 80% of them suffer from mental health issues like post-traumatic stress disorder. Both I and my daughter have that. Bipolar disorder or depression. Without the right treatment, these disorders make it hard to find and keep employment. And LGBTQ youth are overrepresented in the foster care system. A lot of parents freak out when their son or daughter comes out and it doesn't lead to a good outcome at all. We need to be helping these youth. We don't need to be just letting them end up on the street. A national survey found that about 40% of youth served in homeless centers and other agencies serving youth identify as LGBTQ+. Up to 56% spent time homeless, excuse me for all the mistakes, because they felt safer on the streets, resulting from rejection even in the foster homes that should be accepting them. And that's just not right. Oh, girls in the foster care system have an extremely high risk of being pregnant. That is another risk factor. So far, Risk factors for homelessness, trauma and mental illness, being LGBTQ, and pregnancy. 20% of young women in the general population become pregnant by age 19. That's a scary statistic. That's count 5 girls, 1 out of 5 are at very high risk of becoming pregnant. Young mothers have a much harder time securing housing, financial assistance, and education. Tell me about it. Ugh. Criminal activity. The foster care system can act as a pipeline into prison. Youth placed in group homes are 2.5 times more likely to get involved in the justice system. 90% with 5 or more foster placements will enter the justice system. Having a mental illness or being a person of color already predisposes people to having the police called on them, and so does simply being in foster care. Many youth report that foster parents are quick to call the police on them for small crimes. Many group homes are quick to report misbehaving young people to the police. That's so sad. We imprison more people than communist China. We spend billions of dollars on incarceration because we don't have a mental health residential system anymore. You pretty much have to be rich to get into one of those situations. And there's, because of Reagan said, oh, we got abuse going on in the mental health system. Let's close it down. And Congress listened to him. Republicans have no hearts. All they see is money. So I'm talking about Republicans in power. I'm not talking about your average neighbor who's Republican. They're just misled, poor things. So having a mental illness or, let's see, I already read that. Okay, what's being done about the crisis? So the things here are trauma and mental illness, being LGBTQ, pregnancy, and criminal activity. Those are 4 very important issues that increase the risk for homelessness for foster youth. So what's being done about it? Yeah, why isn't more being done? I'd like to know. The foster care to homelessness pipeline has long been an invisible problem. But there is the Annie E. Casey Foundation. They work on many fronts to help youth transitioning out of foster care. They fund research on why so many foster youths become homeless and promote numerous programs and initiatives around all of the above risk factors and more. Their work has educated and inspired countless others to join the effort. Their grants have created many new programs that otherwise might never have gotten off the ground. So thank you, Annie E. Casey Foundation. That's wonderful. Standout solutions to ending homelessness among former foster youth. There are several actions you can take to help end homelessness. Mentorship programs. Becoming a mentor yourself is a great way to make a tremendous difference in the life of a child. I've tried to apply for mentorship programs. Unfortunately, it requires going out of the house, and I'm homebound, so I wish there were online opportunities to do this, and that way the parents could be there, or somebody who's an advocate for the child can be there just in case, someone's not giving them good advice or whatever. But, I wouldn't object if I was a mentor, since I'm mentally ill. I would not mind parents or some support person being there with the child, just, to supervise. You know, better mental health programs. This is the second bulleted item. Around a more complete understanding of complex trauma are needed. Complex trauma is trauma that happens repeatedly over an extended period. Examples include severe child abuse, domestic violence, and experiencing war. There are many ways you can work on your end to destigmatize mental health. We really need to destigmatize mental health. We need to make it available to everybody. One good thing that's come out of COVID is we have more telemedicine in the mental health arena. I think every school in the nation should have access to a program where a child can get telemedicine at school so that if they have an issue, they can talk to a therapist. High school counselors are not therapists. They are usually experimental psychologist people. They have learned how to give tests. This is not what children need with the suicide rates in our schools, especially our middle schools and high schools, but particularly the middle school years, 7th grade to 9th grade. They're most at risk for cyberbullying and other things that go on in school that really stigmatize them. And, then if they go get mental health treatments, their friends make fun of them because it's just not in most normal people's vocabulary that, a therapist is a good thing. So we really need better PR for mental health programs. And now that we have the prevalence of mental health available through telemedicine, we really need to equip every school with that access for free so that students can just log in and talk to a therapist and have somebody in their court. If the parents object, of course, then it's not an option. But I think that if the parents object, maybe the school needs to look at the parents and say, why do you object? Do you think that something's going to go on that you are afraid of? Maybe more education is needed on mental health and what it's really all about. And again, schools should not be forcing parents to do things that they do not want to do. I'm a firm believer that the parents should lead the education. And if they don't want their children taught about certain things, I think it's sad, but they should have the right to control what their children are taught. We need more individual education in schools. So, say you've got a bunch of Muslim students in school, they should be allowed to go and pray together. If Christian students want to pray before exams, they should be allowed to do that. If Buddhist students have a routine that they usually do during the day, they should be allowed to do that. I don't see why fundamentalist Christians are threatened by any sort of religion being in schools except theirs. Because it is a good thing to learn about other cultures and other ways of believing. You don't want to confuse children, but on the other hand, you don't want to isolate them so they only hear one point of view. But all in all, a parent is ultimately responsible for what their children are taught, and they ought to have flexibility in the school system. With the advances in AI and machine learning and, individual, with the computer stuff, you can tailor a curriculum to the individual child. So, I think there should be discussions about race. I think it is wrong to have these laws where you cannot discuss race in a classroom. Slavery was a part of the U.S. history. I do not think that this should be taken out of the curriculum. But on the other hand, if you've got a parent who is adamant that they don't want their child exposed to any kind of talk about race, then they should have that choice. That is ultimately their choice, as long as the child is not 18. So, I think that this kind of education should be open to everyone. So if a student is 18, they can decide, well, I want to learn about race. And they should be allowed to do so in the public schools. I think that at 18, that's the age that a child is considered a grown-up in our society, and they should have the complete control over what they learn and all of that. So, I think that up until that age, it is up to the parents to decide what's appropriate. I, for one, did not want my child exposed to PG-13 movies before she was 13, and I was the one that had to deal with her waking up every night with nightmares about what she'd seen at a movie at school that was supposed to be a treat. I've had people at the daycare that was county run laugh at me for my attitudes about not wanting my child to be exposed to bad words. It's my duty as a parent to decide what I want my child to be exposed to. It's one reason I pulled my younger one out and did homeschool. I could control it then. I still had the core curriculum, and I had to do that. But, I was willing to do that. But we also had schooling on religion, and we had, we talked about a lot of things. And I was very pleased that I was able to homeschool her. I became disabled about the same time. And I said, well, I can't work. I might as well educate my child. And it worked out very well. But, I think that we need more choices in the schools so that parents have choices about what kind of education that their child is exposed to. But better mental health programs are needed. And so we just need to destigmatize mental health, period. Advocacy for higher wages and more job opportunities for those with criminal records goes a long way. Lawmakers are starting to take notice of the fact that wages have nowhere near kept up with inflation. Things like calling and writing to legislators and studying up on policy yourself will make you an effective advocate. Well, if you don't have a Republican that you're writing to and you've got Democratic views. Marjorie Taylor Greene ignores my emails, so I feel totally powerless as her constituent. It's ridiculous, but my Democratic lawmakers listen to me and they respond to my emails, so I am encouraged. Donate to agencies that get the word out about the causes of homelessness and equip people to be agents of change. And that is something that I don't have the money to do, but I encourage anybody that does have money to donate to these agencies, please, pick a cause and donate to it, because that's the only way we're going to see significant change in some of these important issues. The more people who get homeless, the less people we have having a voice in government, because How do you go and show an ID at the voting place if you're homeless and your ID keeps getting stolen constantly because you are on the street? It's ridiculous that we can't empower our people. This is something where facial recognition technology would be very useful, so that if a homeless person doesn't have an ID, you have an ID. You have your face. You know, they shouldn't have to have a state ID, which takes time and money to get. Even if it's offered for free in your state, you still have the cost of how are you going to get to the government office. If you live in an encampment, you're either going to have to walk or you're going to have to try to get a ride. And if you're homeless and you have gotten to the point that you look homeless, once you get to that point, you are closed off from going in government buildings, from going in stores, even if you have an income. And 50% of the people who are on the street are working every day and they do have an income. Either they are working or they have Social Security. But, what can you do with money if you can't even go in a store and buy a phone? I get very upset. I talked to this homeless man named Mark. He was in the Walmart parking lot at the street end, way, way away from the store. He was taking a nap on the grass, and we brought him a bucket with some dry milk and water and containers. And so I woke him up and I told him, we have this for you. And he was so touched, he had tears in his eyes. He says, I appreciate you just stopping and talking to me, ma'am. He was very polite. And he was an older man and he was disabled. And he got disabled because he lost his job and he was on the street and he got beaten up and woke up in a hospital. Now, how bad is that? It's not safe to be on the streets. I mean, anybody knows that. But if you talk to some of these people and hear their stories, it's just horrifying that this is an epidemic, worse than COVID in our country, that good people are out in the street. And a lot of politicians will say, oh, they're bad people because they're too shiftless to work. Well, how do you explain the fact that half of them are working and getting paychecks, but they can't afford the rent? It's a crisis in this country that we don't have cheap housing, and the housing industry has the local government zoning all tied up in their little hands. It's like you have to have so many square feet in your house. Well, the poor could probably scrape up enough money for a tiny house if they were legalized, or if they could have a little cart. There's this guy named Elvis. You can look him up on GoFundMe. He builds little houses that are on wheels. It's like a hand cart that a homeless person can have. It's got enough room in it for a mattress. So you've got a door that locks, and you can put your little things in there, and you can lock the door and get a good night's sleep if a policeman's not knocking on your door. But I mean, you might have to move it, and they have to move constantly because police say, oh, you can't park here. Because rich people don't want poor people parking on their doorstep or where their business is because it makes their business look bad or whatever. They need to provide some land for people to camp out on, and they need to provide some facilities, basic things like showers. It's, I think Jesus would look at the situation and shake his head and say, oh, ye who do not wish to take care of the poor, it will not be well for ye. Because Jesus had compassion for everybody. He was homeless. He didn't have any place to stay. He was traveling and preaching, and he was dependent on good Christians who would take him in and feed him, and provide him with a little water to bathe his feet. You know, we need to consider that, just saying that we can't afford it. How can we afford for our tax money to be spent cleaning up homeless camps and putting people in mental health prisons? There is such a thing. I was shocked to find out that, and mental health prisons are prisons, make no doubt about that. They don't get mental health care. They're just, it's a place to put them and throw away the key. We don't even want to educate prisoners because, there are so many people that feel like, well, we can't afford to be throwing away money educating prisoners. But yet, I'm not talking about robbers, rapists, murderers. I'm not talking about people who perpetrated violent crimes. Yes, they belong in jail. I'm talking about people who got put in jail for possession of drugs or because they're an addict. Why don't we have care for them? Why can't we have rehabilitation? Why can't we have drug treatment that is affordable? Because if a person has no money, they've spent it all on drugs, and you might say, well, they deserve that. Does a quarter of America deserve that? If you count 4 people, one of them is high. People turn to drugs when they have no hope. And there are a lot of people who have come back from that road and they lead good lives and they serve the community. There are dozens of stories. If you search the news, you will find them easily of ex-cons who decided to start a business and they help youth, or they help people who are homeless, or they help people who have been incarcerated. I mean, these stories are common. That there are a lot of people in our prisons who could be rehabilitated, but we want to take away all their rights as a citizen because they commit one crime when they're teenage. Give me a break. We do not need to be putting people in jail because they have truancy in school, and that goes on a lot. We need to have programs to prevent this, and we need to have social workers who work along with the police. If it's a violent call, send a policeman. Don't send me a social worker. But if it is a domestic dispute, if it is somebody is in your neighborhood and you don't know why they're in your neighborhood and they just look suspicious, send a social worker to assess them. If they're not doing anything violent, don't send the police, send a social worker. We have so much nonviolent crime going on in this country. If somebody breaks into your car to steal your CDs and they're underage, maybe you should have a social worker talk to them. What's going on in their life that they feel like they have to do that? There are career criminals, and yes, they belong in jail. I am not going to say that we just need to abolish prisons. No. And, certain Republicans would have people thinking that, oh, these Democrats want to just open the jails. And, no. And we don't want to abolish the police. There are some radical people that say abolish the police, but think about this. I lived in a black neighborhood. That's where I bought my only ever house, and that's where I lost my only ever house. Under a government program, I learned all about how to fix my credit, how to qualify for a loan, and that all loan officers aren't equal. I learned a lot in the free course that came with this program that taught me how to go about affording a house. I learned exactly how much house I could afford, which was about a $40,000 house. Now, in today's market, you don't get a $40,000 house very often. There are some, but very few. And this government program did not cover trailers. I could have gotten a trailer for that much, but they don't cover trailers. Why do you think that is? Because trailers aren't very sturdy. Mobile homes in a tornado just get torn apart. So they're not very safe places to live in. They are cheap, and I'm living in one now, but I don't recommend them. That's the last resort. We have pets. I don't want to be limited to one pet. We have three. So we live in a mobile home. We don't get any government assistance for that because they don't give government assistance if you're living in a mobile home. Excuse me. So, the cheap housing is very hard to get. But what I was saying is I lived in a black neighborhood, and I was getting to this point. I had that house for 7 years. At the beginning of the 4th year, we got a prowler. He was after my daughter. He was high as a kite. He would be staring in her window at her, trying to see something, and he would be doing vile things outside her window. We called the police a lot. And I talked to my black neighbors and I said, we all need to call the police on this guy because I found out through them he was trying to break in their houses too. Now, he was a black guy, but, just because he was a black guy doesn't mean that all my black neighbors were bad people. On the contrary, they were better neighbors than my white neighbors. They were always there if I needed to borrow something, or, we borrowed from each other. We watched out for each other. We were a tight-knit community, and I've never experienced that in a white community. Black people are special. But call the police. And they weren't doing anything illegal. I knew them well enough to know a bit about them, and they were not doing anything illegal. They were law-abiding people like me. But they were afraid to call the police, and I couldn't understand this as a white person. It's like, why wouldn't you call the police if you've got danger? And they said, oh, honey, we're not calling the police, And I found out that we had a black police chief. And I thought, why would black people be afraid to call the police if you've got a black police chief? I thought maybe he'd be on their side. No. He was going to the trailer park across the street and terrorizing the youth there. It's like, what? And they were all black. We had one that would ride a motorcycle on the sidewalk. It's not it's not a really big deal, but people would call the police on him. And then the black police chief would go and threaten him. Now, this is not legal. This is not right. Not by any stretch of the imagination. But and the fellow was really nice, really personable. I got along well with him. I would see him when I went to City Hall to pay my water bill. So, he didn't seem like a bad person. But yet I heard these stories from my black neighbors and I started paying attention. You know, if their youth was getting terrorized, were they getting terrorized? You know, and I've heard so much in the news now about black people just 'cause they're black, they're not breaking the law in their car, but they get pulled over all the time. And they'll find something to write a ticket on them about. I believe it. After having black neighbors and after hearing the conversations and talking to them and asking them questions, I believe it. It's not fair that police are only for white people. Police should be for everybody. So no wonder black people are saying defund the police because the police are practically useless to black people. They are only here to protect white people. Now, how is that right? So, yeah, this is really a problem. And homeless people and disabled people are just as likely to be a target for a policeman as a person of color. It is very, very sad. There are so many elderly people with dementia sitting in jail. There are so many people with disabilities who are, in psychology, there are psychoses and neuroses. A person with a psychosis has a break with reality. Their reality is not the same as what you see around you. And for a policeman to tell somebody to get down on the ground or to put their hands behind their back or whatever directions a policeman would give, if they are not able to hear and understand that command, then they are likely to get shot. They are likely to have injuries from being forced to the ground. I mean, it's horrible. As a disabled person, you are more suspect than a regular person who's, able to be oriented and know where they are and be able to see and hear the policeman. Somebody who is hallucinating has a break with reality and they may not understand what is being said to them. But you can't see that process going on. And if somebody's acting funny, a policeman gets nervous. I can't blame the police for getting nervous, but on the other hand, in the process of doing their job, people are dying. People are getting put in jail for the rest of their lives for something that, they get a charge of resisting arrest when maybe they're not even aware that they're being arrested. They think they're being attacked by someone or something that the policeman can't see. That's what a hallucination is. It's a fantasy world that is invisible to the rest of us. And if someone is in that fantasy world, they may not see or hear what we can see and hear just fine. So that's why I think that there should be social workers in police departments. There should be people trained to handle domestic calls with means other than threats and guns. We need a kinder, gentler way of policing for people who are not trying to kill somebody, trying to break in their homes, trying to force them to do something they don't want to do. And I'm talking about sexual stuff. People that are doing those things, yes, you need a policeman and you need him now. But for cases of domestic abuse, for cases of somebody who's mentally ill and they are not in the real world and making threats or whatever to something unseen, you need a social worker as well as that policeman. You need the policeman to gently restrain the person, but you need the social worker to assess them. So, I'm not saying that we should just take away all funding for the police. I'm not insinuating that, but I'm saying that we need better ways to control riots. We need better ways of approaching a mentally ill or possibly mentally ill person. We need better ways of evaluating people on the spot to detect mental illness in somebody who is exhibiting threatening behavior. Because if they are not experiencing reality, they should be treated a little differently than someone who's a psychopath and they're ready to kill everybody in sight just because they have a grudge. It's a totally different mindset. It's a totally different set of circumstances. So, incarceration, homelessness, poverty, lack of health care, lack of mental health care. These are all interrelated issues and they are complex. That's why we haven't got a good solution to them yet, because they are very complex issues. And you have certain politicians who want to say that it's one issue and it's one thing only and we need to fight against this. No. Social issues are complicated. That's why we have not solved them yet. And these one-sided, ham-fisted approaches are not the way to handle them in a healthy way. Just my opinion. Okay, let me go back to Twitch. And I've been talking about this for a while. Hey, Zara, how are you? Good to see you. I am talking about homelessness, policing, and all sorts of stuff like that as they pertain to handicapped people. So, have you got any questions, or are you just hanging out with me, which is cool? If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them, and I'll look up the stuff and try to do some good research. Because I was talking about borderline personality disorder earlier, so I'm just kind of looking at Twitter and seeing what's out there. I found this article on the pipeline to homelessness, and definitely the foster care system is something that needs a lot of work. But because nobody needs help more than children who have been abused. It's just the mental health picture there is a very complicated issue. So I guess I'll keep watching the chat in case you want to say something. Otherwise, I'll just go back to Twitter for a minute and see what else I can find about handicapped people. Oh, Marcus Flowers. I love Marcus Flowers. He's running against Marjorie Taylor Greene, so. This guy George Han is funny. I just tried to go into a store that required pants. This is an infringement on my rights and freedoms. Okay. Let's see. The Brennan Center is saying the Supreme Court practically sent Congress an engraved invitation to address gerrymandering. Lawmakers must now answer it with action. I agree. Once new voting maps are drawn, they are difficult to change, and that's where a lot of discrimination happens. Let's see. Cool, they're doing studies on astronauts. Let's see. Oh, this is interesting. Caitlin Rivers, PhD, says employers, you want mitigation measures in schools too. It doesn't matter how much of your workforce is vaccinated if they are out for 2 weeks every time their kids have an exposure at school. This is very true. People don't think about these foolish school policies like, oh, you can wear a mask if you want to. What good does that do for parents who are trying to work and all of a sudden their kids got to be out of school for 2 weeks because they got exposed? If people wear masks, there will be less spread and less chance of dangerous variants like Delta. So, let's see. We've got a warning of potential conspiracy theory fueled violence in August. Oh my heavens. The country's going nuts. Oh, cool. This lawyer is saying, for the lay people, lawyers are not required to do whatever the client demands. They can refuse and they can withdraw. That's what ethical lawyers do. I like that. Yeah. Dr. Tom Frieden, we can underestimate COVID at our peril. It's shown again and again that it can be quite deadly, and it's not done with us yet. I'm going to retweet that one. Jake Loban says, average COVID hospital $73,300. Average vaccine, $0. I like that. I'm going to retweet that too. Let's see. Ooh, latest solar news. Solar energy system for pools. That's cool. Let's see. Shady stuff going on with the post office, but I'm looking for disability issues. Here's an issue about COVID. Kimberly Prather, PhD, she says, with a virus that is as contagious as chickenpox, that is as contagious as chickenpox, the top priority before schools open should be ensuring clean indoor air. Ventilation and filtration should be rolling out of experts' mouths as frequently as masks and vaccines. We need them all to protect unvaccinated kids. And I'm going to add a quote treat. Schools should also install UV sanitizers in their ducts near AC units and buy room sterilizers for empty room sanitation. UV sanitizers. Clean indoor air. Schools. School reopening. Okay, I'm retweeting that. Yeah. Okay, let's see if I can find anything else. Oh, cool. ESA is doing stuff in the space station. Let's see. Cool. That's neat. Let's see. Let's see. Hmm. Oh, goodness. Oh. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Well, let me come back and see. Okay. Checking the chat. I'm diving back into Twitter. Ooh. Oh, there's water on Jupiter's largest moon. Cool. Juno is wonderful. Okay. Uh, Missouri Representative Cori Bush. I love her. Um, her sleeping on the Capitol steps because of the trying to convince people to extend the moratorium on evictions. That's just a lot of courage. I'm very happy she did that. Let's see. Aww. Oh, poor baby. Let's see. Oh, how to record the screen on your Android phone. I want to read that later. So I added it to my pocket. Let's see. Let's see. Still looking. Let's see. Cool. Black activists shut down traffic at Reagan National Airport in order to stop the Senate from flying home on recess until they end the filibuster and pass the For the People Act to protect voting rights. I am definitely for that. I think that it's ridiculous that we don't have any federal help to protect our voting rights. Used to be in Georgia that I could ask them to send me voter forms for each. All right, let me get this straight. Absentee ballots, I could get them sent to me for a year because I requested it. Now I can't do that. These new voting laws are ridiculous, and it makes it harder for me to vote. Everything is hard when you're disabled, and I think that they should make it easier for us instead of harder. Let's see. Third straight Olympic gold. Cool. USA water polo and 2 others. That's cool. This is interesting. Just weeks ago, Floridians were grieving for the victims of the Champlain Towers collapse. Me too. That included our governor, who spent days at the site. We have lost 6 times the number of Surfside victims in the past week to COVID. Where's DeSantis for these families? Yeah, I'd like to know that too. He's not my governor, but he's politics is ugly. Let's see. That's not entirely true. Somebody's saying if Marcus Georgia is not elected, then Marjorie Taylor Greene will be reelected. Well, he's not the only one running against her, so that's not entirely true. I'll have to go on there and do my little birdwatch thing. Don't get me wrong, I love Marcus Flowers, but I don't think that it's good to engage in misleading things just because you want him to get elected. Cool. So let's see, let me check on the chat. Okay. I'm still looking at Twitter and still looking for something to copy a link from that pertains to disabilities. Let's see. I'm looking. La, 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 la. Okay. And now I've gotten refreshed, so I'm having to look through all the things I've already looked through. Let's see. Steps for collective well-being in the new school year. Let's see what they've got to say. This is from Edutopia. Anything for collective well-being would benefit handicapped students as well. So teachers can rebuild connections and create an educational environment in which they support students and each other. That sounds cool. Okay, so the disproportionate impact of the pandemic has highlighted the presence of bias in education. Let me copy this over because I'm all about well-being. So, looking at this article, if I can spell, on well-being and the coming school year. And there's the link, and boom. All right. Now you can see what I'm looking at. Okay. The disproportionate impact of the pandemic has highlighted the presence of bias in education. Increasingly, educators, myself included, are recognizing that we are part of an institution that has created disadvantages for many students. I can definitely agree with that. We need to embrace a model of education that elevates all of our students. A restorative approach that is trauma-informed and healing-centered needs to be part of this transition. The lady writing this is a high school counselor. We've really recognized grief in the ways it is experienced. We've had to think as a community about how to connect with young people and each other. If we're really to become this place of growth, empathy, and compassion, we need to center our students in a more holistic way that goes beyond academics. Oh, this is so good. This is so good. I'm glad to see this article. Take a healing-centered approach. The pandemic made the marginalization that Black, brown, poor, and special needs students experience ever more pronounced. That's so true. So, this approach meets a foundational need to experience connection and a sense of belonging. So, make time at the start of the school year to rebuild connections. Get to know your colleagues and students. Acknowledge and greet each other. Make sure everyone feels seen. Oh, that's nice. Humanize each other beyond school roles. Ask your students about their values, interests, passions, and lives beyond school. Get a sense of who they are by having them share their favorites. What gifts do they bring? Reflect on what it means to be and work in community. Build a classroom that is grounded in collective values. Cool. And ask students write down a value that's important to them as they think about their family, community, and friendships, and explain why this value has meaning to them. Create community guidelines collaboratively. Wonderful. Make time for check-ins. Okay. Listen to one another. Make sure everyone's heard. Consider ceremony and ritual to commemorate the previous year. Reflect on the losses and challenges. Journaling, writing letters, writing poems, composing music, and creating collages can be helpful activities for students to process what they've been through on their COVID-19 year. This is so healthy. This is so mentally healthy. I love it. Create a memorial so they can have a community memorial or pandemic gallery. Wow. Pause, have a moment of silence, connect. Allow space and time to sit with the year that was. Oh, that's wonderful. Students can share their personal stories and experiences in smaller groups. That's wonderful. Self and community care are important to well-being. They sure are. A focus on wellness is essential. Cool. So this whole project is to continue to address inequity in the schools in more systemic ways. I love this. I love this. And there is another article or two or three. Wow, lots of cool. Yeah. Oh, this is neat. So many good articles in Edutopia. Oh my goodness. This I hope teachers listen. This is so essential. Cool. So I've got that link here. All right, let's take another dive into Twitter and see what we can come up with. So I'm going to go back and retweet that now that I've read the article. This article has many ways to increase general support for each other in the classroom. And I'm going to give it a hashtag. Teachers are powerful. Or maybe I shouldn't put teachers are powerful. Teachers force for good. Or maybe not force for good. Source for good. Maybe. Let's see. I'll just put teachers' mental health. Yeah. All right. Good. Oh, Mashable has something on these new prosthetic fingers are helping people regain independence. Oh, wow. That's neat. Oh, that is cool. They've got Mashable has a little video of people getting prosthetics for missing fingers. Wow. Oh, that is so cool. They've got a juggler who's wearing a finger prosthesis. Oh, this is wonderful. Powered by the wearer's hand movements. Cool. Cool. Here's this guy with missing fingers. He's able to use these prosthetics to use the key in his car to turn the car on. I mean, oh my goodness, this is life-changing. They've got someone playing the guitar, adjusting his watch. I mean, oh wow, this is huge. I'm going to put a link to it. A retweet is what I'm going to do. We're making so many advances in prosthetics. I'm going to put a hashtag on that to make it easy for people to find it. That's wonderful. Okay. So how do I... Whoop. Don't want to do that now, do I? I can't really put a link on it. Well, you'll just have to look on my Twitter feed. But definitely, that's cool. I wish I could. Oh, wait. Now I've got a link. Okay. Got a link. Got a link. I can put it there. Yeah. Prosthetic fingers. That's just fantastic. Welcome back. Okay. Oh, that's your original message, Zara. I thought you went out maybe for a cigarette break or something. Okay. Now let me go back and see what else I can find. Somebody's saying, hope these fingers can be affordable to reach the ones who need it as soon as possible. I agree so much. Okay, let's look. Oh, let's see here. That's cool. Becky Worley says, a sunscreen life hack. Instead of squeezing it into your palm, put it on the back of your hand. This is an area that gets a ton of sun, and we often forget to cover it. That is a really good idea. I'm going to retweet that one. All right, good. Let's see. La 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 la. Well, there's some stuff in Arabic. I don't read Arabic, but that's okay. Let's see. My dry eyes are getting to me. I think I will drink some fluid if I can find it. Oh, there it is. Okay. Alrighty. Aloe juice. Hello.
Need more water?
I will in a minute. Let me go ahead and drink it, and then I'll ask you to refill it.
Thought I heard the clong clong of no real water. Done with your stream already?
Mm-mm.
Oh, you still on it?
Still on it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, till 10.
Okay. Let me know when your water is your water empty, or are you drinking the last of it?
Now it's empty.
All
Thank
right.
you.
I'll make you more water.
Yay. Just make a gallon, and then you can just refill it from the
I know. That's what
gallon.
I'm gonna do.
Okay, cool.
Refill it from the gallon.
Alrighty.
I need to make a gallon of that.
All right, I'm retweeting a thing about the Delta wave's very rapid rise of hospitalizations. So I'm saying, scary, please consider getting vaccinated. I don't have any lasting side effects from the vaccine, but I have worsened insomnia and new skin problems from having COVID in December. Because I do. COVID does bad things to your body. Yeah. Okay. Oh, some people. Goodness. Okay. Lots of news about COVID. Let's see. Oh, New York Times books talking about the many meanings of Milan. The only Asian American in her new school, Milan is promptly renamed Melanie without her consent by the principal. Wow, that would be a powerful book. Nobody should be renamed just because they've got an unusual name. Goodness. People are constantly trying to rename me. I get called Danis, Dana, Denise, Danny's. People pronounce it all sorts of ways. Goodness gracious. And it's pronounced Danis. It's like Dennis with an A. But let's see here. Oh, the U.S. second-hand clothing market is estimated to double to $77 billion worth within 5 years, according to online thrift store ThredUp. That's cool. That's way cool. I'm gonna retweet that. Let's see. Hmm. Well, in the Texas House of Representatives, more Republicans are out today due to COVID. About 10. They will need to quarantine for 2 weeks. So there will likely be no quorum. Wow. I'm telling you, people need to believe in COVID because it's, wow. President Biden is doing a good job. I'm very pleased with the job he's doing. Let's see. Going down. Aww. Somebody posted a picture of, well, it's a video of this deer just having a blast playing in this puddle. Oh, I've got to, that is so cool. I want to share this. This is just too good not to share. I love animal videos, so I have a lot of stuff. I'm going to retweet it too. I have a lot of lighthearted things in my Twitter feed because, nobody wants to see just gloom and doom, and the news is full of that. So I try to have something lighthearted in there. And this deer playing in the puddle. There. Because it's not obvious from the link what that's about. Okay. The thread has a lot of other animals having fun in the mud. Oh my goodness. The Interior Department says 35 agency staffers have died from COVID-19, according to The Hill. That's terrible. Ooh, it's really bad. Let's see, what else can I find? Let's go down a little further. Hmm, let's see. Here's a doctor talking about Delta variant. I'm going to retweet that. Oh my goodness. Hmm. Wow. Let's see. Still looking for something about disabilities. Well, this is an interesting. I don't want to. I don't want to play it because I don't want to do a copyright violation. But if I give you this hashtag, you can watch it. What is it like to work in a state mental hospital? Or what was it like? And there's the link. And there's, yeah, interesting. I have not watched it, but I'm going to add it to my pocket so I can watch it later. Oh, thank you. Ooh, yay! Oh, I've been waiting for this to come. Check this out. Here's the unboxing of my brand new toy. It's a drum. It's what do they call it? I have several things to go with it. I have a pair of drumsticks. I have a little booklet. Steel tongue drum. Music book. So, if you don't mind, I'm going to play with this a minute. But I'll need to find a song that's not copyrighted. All right. I think you'll recognize this one. Let's see. Okay, I'm just finding out where the tones are. Let's see here. Can't see my little music book. Oh, this is so tiny. Let's see. I'm trying to read this. I don't know. And of course, it's not really going to resonate very well on my chest, but I can try. Let's see. If I could read this, I would know what to do. Let's see. Need a little more light on that. Let's see. I'm going to have to practice with this, but oh, it's just, it feels good in the hands, and it just has such beautiful tones. I wonder if I put it on the computer, if my computer can tolerate the weight. Oh, much better. I've wanted one of these for years. And I finally got one, yay! And it didn't cost that much. It was about $10 on Amazon. This is the 6-inch model, and it's plenty big enough to have really good sound. Whoop. Cool. Now Kitty is getting curious. It's cool. Oh, Corinne's gonna sit here and watch. She's sitting right at the edge of the computer. I don't think you can see her. She is right over here and just watching this. She likes it. cool. I love it. I love it. I'm going to have to play with this more. Back to the stuff at hand, but oh, it's got a little rubber thing here, a little rubber diaphragm, so that I guess that helps with the resonation, with the resonance. Resonation, that's not a word. Resonance, that's a word. So when you put it on a flat surface, it has little rubber feet that sit on it. And then, as well as these, you want to smell that? You want to smell that? Corrine is here and just sitting there, and she's just fascinated with this. It's so funny. And it also comes with little thumb tappers. So if you want to use your fingers, you can do this. So let's see what this sounds like. I've just got to see. This is, oh, it's several. So there are, oh, oops, I better not drop those because Kitty will have them. Okay, there are 4. So let's get this. Are there not 4? Yeah, that's the 4th one. That's a 4th one. Okay. I'll put them here. And so you can get effects like that. Oh, cool. Definitely, I'm going to have to play with this thing. This is so cool. Well, I'm getting to the end of my live stream. So let me think of a handicapped minute to leave you with. So we've talked a lot about physical disability, and we've talked a lot about mental disability. And
That's pretty.
Isn't it beautiful? It's just, ooh, it's just
It's got
cool.
these plastic things over the letters.
No,
What is that?
that is the letters, I think.
Is?
I believe so. So that one's probably just coming up. The numbers help you use the book to read it. I guess when they put that one on, it stuck up a little bit, but I don't think those are meant to come off. I could be mistaken, but I'm not going to pull it off unless I'm pretty sure. It may be there just to protect the letters, but I think that is, the numbers, not letters. So, anyway, handicapped minute. Okay. Let me think. Of all the disability issues, what do I want to talk about? Well, if we're going to talk about mental health, at some point you're going to be facing grief. And grief takes many forms. It's not just when someone dies. It is also if you've got...
Watcher.
Thank you. If you've got disability.
I'm going to play mine.
Okay, good. Yeah, we both got one, so we can do duets.
Wait, it comes with a songbook?
Yes, it does.
Yay!
And little thumb things that you can put on your fingers. Not thumb things, but little tappers that go on your fingers. So if you want to play it with your hands, or you can use the drumsticks. And there are different kinds of drumsticks you can get for them too. So it's cool. But yeah, it comes with the songbook, and it comes with the drumsticks and the little finger picks. And it's so cool. It's really a very nice little kit. And for less than $10, and it's got more numbers in case your numbers fall off. So really, really nice. Yeah, really nice. But if you're already handicapped in any way, grief is going to have more of an effect on you. But it doesn't mean that you have to drown yourself in despair. There's always hope. And any kind of grief, whether it is grief for a loved one, grief for a pet, is very real. So, I've been through that many times, and it is very hard to lose a pet. It is almost as bad as losing a child, and in some cases can be as bad. Because if you don't have children, your pet is your baby. So we just feel this parenting towards our pet, and it can be as intense as the grief of losing a child. So, different people are going to have different opinions on that, and that's fine. There's a lot of room for discussion in this, but what is very real is grief when you lose an ability. A lot of people, when they get too weak to walk around and they have to resort to a wheelchair, that is a very real grief. Also, when people develop balance problems, and for their safety they need to use a cane or elbow crutches. This is a very real grief. Or having to use a walker. All of a sudden, taking a trip is much more complicated. So, having to use disability equipment kind of marks you as a disabled person, when maybe you weren't marked in that way before. This is a grief process. It takes time to wrap your head around it. You have a body image of yourself. You have a psychological image of yourself. And getting any diagnosis that is a chronic diagnosis, is not something that will go away, is devastating. So there is a grief process that goes with that. So don't write off your grief over your disability just because you feel like, well, I shouldn't feel sad because it's just a change, right? But it's a significant change to you. So that feeling is valid. There is a grief process involved. So if you acknowledge that, you say, well, what do I do about it? I don't even know how to handle losing a loved one, much less dealing with this. Yeah, it is very difficult to get to a psychological place where you're okay with your disability. It doesn't mean that you're ever going to accept that, oh my gosh, I'm disabled. It's always going to be a source of depression for you. But it doesn't have to really zap you out of your day, It doesn't have to be something that is going to paralyze you and you just lose all joy in life. If you let it get too far, it can. I'm not trying to minimize people who have gone into a severe depression after losing a leg or after getting a chronic diagnosis at the doctor. this is something that a lot of people don't think of as a disability, but it is another disability for you because it's so difficult to go from where you were, you didn't feel like anything was wrong with you maybe, or maybe you've had chronic illness all your life like I have, and all of a sudden you've got something else to deal with. And a lot of elderly people go through this. What else are they going to find wrong with me? It's very easy to get into that very destructive mode of thinking. You don't want to get to the point that you just don't want to go to the doctor because they're going to find something else wrong with you. No. If you've got medical problems, they need to be addressed. And, it's logical and reasonable that, yes, you're going to have to take that step and go to the doctor if you've got something going on. We tend to ignore what's wrong with us. We tend to say, oh, I can just ignore this and keep going. But you can with some things. If you've got a minor headache and you're used to having those and you take a couple of Tylenol and it goes away, then, that's easy to deal with. But some things like chronic pain, like I have from fibromyalgia, it's difficult to ignore. I operate pretty much on distraction. I used to take pain medicine for it, but I don't anymore because I found that I didn't like the side effects, and it doesn't really work that well for me. So, if I have major surgery, yes, I want morphine, and I did not get addicted to morphine, and I did not get addicted to hydrocodone. It was given to me for a short period of time while I had severe pain, and that went away because it was surgery and it was for a short time. So I don't suggest that anybody should be afraid of asking for pain medicine if you have had major surgery. Yes, you need it. And you probably are not going to get addicted to it. And that's your doctor's job to make sure you don't get addicted to it. You're not going to want to be taking that long term. Now, if you have a cancer diagnosis, or if you have something really major going on that you need pain medicine on a regular basis, that's something you talk with your doctor about. And it can be a problem for people who just can't handle the constant pain. And a lot of doctors are afraid of their patients getting addicted, so they won't give you as much pain meds as maybe you think you need. That's a whole nother subject for another day, but basically, if you've got a disability, it's perfectly normal to have some grief over losing an ability or having to adjust your life to a new routine because of a disability. But if you feel you need help with that, there's nothing wrong with consulting a therapist, or just talking to a good friend and saying, I'm frustrated with this. I'm trying to just pretend that everything's okay, and I'm trying to put a smile on my face because I don't want to drag my friends down, but I can't handle this. And sometimes just talking it out helps you to feel better and keep going. We disabled people are not brave, courageous, any of those things that you'll see on the ads on TV. If you have a situation, you don't have a choice. You have to deal with it. And how you choose to deal with it in your own way is where you have many choices. Because what works for me may not work for you. For me, distraction is the key. I'll play a video game. I will, write, do art, all sorts of things. I have lots of hobbies. Some of them I don't touch for months, and then I'll get out. Um, but, like music, I love music. So this thing is really neat. I love it. So, whatever floats your boat. It's better to do something active with your mind, like learning a new skill or learning a language or learning music, a new musical instrument, or, whatever your interests are. It's a valid way to cope with your disability, to just, lose yourself in your music or write, or, even if you're not writing to get published. If you're just putting your feelings down on paper, figurative paper, virtual paper, there is a lot of healing in that. And writing stories about other people not related to my situation really helped me a lot. Now, you might say, well, why wouldn't you want to write about your situation? I'm a science fiction author. I have a very hard time writing a story about a person in a wheelchair or a person using elbow crutches. I mean, I have done it, but it's very hard for me to get into that persona and keep the story moving. It's easier to write about a disability that I don't have or a mental condition that I don't have because I'm not as close to it. And it's a little healthier because one of the things I used to do that was very non-productive, but I would daydream about, well, what if I had a life-threatening situation or whatever? And it just was an exercise in self-pity. That is what you do not want. You do not want to fall into the trap of self-pity. Now, every great once in a while, I'll have a pity party for myself. Last night was no exception. you know, it's normal to have a blue day every once in a while. There's nothing wrong with having a good cry and just getting it out of your system and talking to somebody that's close to you about it and just letting your feelings out. Nothing wrong with that. If it is often, you might want to consider therapy because you don't want to be so depressed that you just lose interest in everything. And being deeply depressed can just suck all the joy out of your life to where you're curled up in a ball on the bed, don't want to do anything. So you don't want to let it get that bad. If it is that bad, try to find yourself a therapist. It can be really, really hard to break out of that. And believe me, I've been there at times. But you want to get help so that you can cope with whatever's happening in your life. And it's healthier for your mind because if you've got a physical disability, there's some mental stuff going on too because the mind-body connection is there. You don't necessarily have to have a mental illness along with a physical illness, but there is a depression element to any physical disability. So part of that grief process is to adjust to, okay, I've got some changes in my life now. My daily routine's going to be a little different, and I've just got to wrap my brain around that. And your self-image suffers because you hopefully have a normal growing up where you've got a good body image. You may be unhappy with your weight, like I am, or you may be unhappy with how skinny you are. Some people have that problem. It's very easy here in the United States to get into this negative body image stuff, and it's really destructive. It's self-destructive. But, I've had my struggles with losing weight, and I'll save that for another time. But, some disabilities, especially mobility disabilities, put you at risk for gaining too much weight. So I'll tackle that in a future video. But the main thing I'm talking about is the grief process and the mental aspects of that grief process and how they relate to your body image. Because if you're suddenly unable to do something that you used to enjoy, it hurts. It's a pain that is almost like a physical pain. And sometimes I forget. Sometimes I forget that I'm mobility disabled because in my mind I'm 16. So I'll jump up and I'll almost fall over, and it's like, whoa, I'm not 16 anymore. My brain doesn't know that. My body knows that. So you just have to make these mental adjustments, and they're just as important as your physical therapy or whatever physical adjustments you're having to make. So it's important to keep a good attitude about it. You don't want to give in to the pity party. Once in a while, it's fine, and it helps you just cry it out and take your frustrations out. Find you a pillow to beat if that helps. It just makes my hands hurt. But, there's lots of things you can do. If you're into art, maybe something physical like pounding clay or shaping clay, squeezing it, that might help you. Even if it doesn't turn out to be a great work of art, you have a physical element of something you can manipulate to get those feelings out. So there's lots of different things that a therapist might suggest to you to help you cope with whatever disability you're coping with. So, just to sum up, there is a grief process to disability, especially new disability. There's a huge adjustment. So, be kind to yourself. Give yourself time to get used to the new routines, and it's going to seem overwhelming maybe, but just keep in mind that you will get used to the new routine. Humans are very adaptable. And it's easy to just be overwhelmed at first and think, I am never going to adjust to this. But you can. And I'm living proof that you can. So don't let the grief paralyze you. Instead, use the grief to spur you to try to look at your can list. Because all disabled people, right, we have the can list and we have the can't list. And sometimes it may seem like the can't list is just taking over your life. But try to focus on that can list and to expand it, because there are always things that you can do. Don't give up. Always think about what you can do, and do listen to your medical professionals and not your friends that say, oh, you just need to exercise more, or, oh, you're just complaining too much. Don't do that. It's like, oh, please. Try to understand your friends who are disabled. If they say they're having a rough day, please don't argue with them and say, oh, you can have a better day if you just have a positive attitude. No, no, no. Positive attitude does not tell you you must do this. Positive attitude tells you, I'm going to listen to my doctors and medical professionals, and I'm going to try to extend what I can do a little at a time and work on it every day. And if you just make that commitment to try things that they're suggesting to you and make them aware of how much discomfort you've got trying to do these new things. Because if you just act like everything's okay, you're smiling, you're, just being as nice as possible, and inside you're going, oh gosh, I don't know how much longer I can take this. You need to be honest with your medical professionals. Let them know if you're starting to have really bad pain where it was moderate before, you need to let them know, hey, my pain levels are going through the roof now, and maybe we could slow down. Because the impulse, the little kid inside us just wants to quit. It's like, this hurts. I don't like it. I want to quit. But on the other hand, the overbearing adult in us will say, you're a wimp. You just don't have the willpower. You don't need either of those in control, okay? There's a middle ground. Listen to your medical professionals. Let them know if you're experiencing so much discomfort you want to quit. It's okay to tell them, oh, I just want to quit. This is so hard. And let them give you a pep talk. If you feel like that one person in your medical team is pushing you and you really feel like you can't do that, it's time to talk to your other members of the team and say, if that person won't listen to you, talk to them first. But if that person won't listen to you, go to somebody else on your medical team and say, hey, I have a problem. And try not to approach this in a blaming way. Maybe the person is genuinely interested in helping you, and maybe they're just a little overzealous about what you can do. It's important to let these people know. Let your physical therapist know if you feel overwhelmed. It's not admitting weakness. In the United States, men and women are pushed not to admit weakness. We women, we go in there to have a baby and, I'm not going to take medicine. I'm not going to take pain medicine. I'm going to be strong. The way to approach that is not that going without pain medicine is strength, because if you are successful at going without pain medicine, like I was with 2 births, it's fine. I did not feel so overwhelmed by my pain that I could not handle it. But I did at one point. I was asking for pain meds when transition started on my first delivery, and it was too late to give pain meds at that time because I was already pushing. So, I was glad later that it was too late because I really didn't want pain medicine. But, you need not to equate strength with willpower to put up with your situation, because that is not what strength is. Strength is listening to your body and listening to your psyche as well, and balancing all the medical advice, all that you are feeling and thinking at the time, all that your body is telling you, and not ignoring any of it. And you just bring it all together and figure out what you want. And that is the way to handle the grief of disability. Don't force yourself to do things that you feel you're at the edge and you just can't take this. Let your professionals around you know what you're feeling, and then they can adjust what you're doing about it. It's a team effort, but you have to drop the facade that we all have. When you're disabled, you have this mask, the smiley face mask, and you put it on and, I'm fine. Inside you're going, I'm dying. I'm dying. I've been there at work. So, you've got to listen to your body, but at the same time, you don't want to listen so intently and so constantly that it drives your psyche insane, because you can do that too. So it's a balancing act, and it's a balancing act every day, and it gets tiresome. But if you let your body and your mind do the input into your team effort to get yourself better, then you will be mentally healthier. You will be able to handle the grief process just fine. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, because it's not. But I'm saying you will be able to handle it. So if you feel like you're totally out of control and you're not handling it, that's the time to reassess, what's going on up here? What's going on with the body? What's going on with the medical team? And try to get some communication going about what is going on. If you're feeling overwhelmed, let people know on your team that you're feeling overwhelmed. You don't feel like you can do this, and you need help to figure out how you can keep going. And they have tools in their toolboxes, all of them. So, that's my advice. Don't let grief paralyze you. Let grief motivate you to listen to all the input and try to make sense of it all and figure out what your path that you want is and what that looks like. So that's my advice on the grief process and disability. And I am going to end my live stream, and thank you for being with me tonight. And I will be back not tomorrow night, but Monday night. So hopefully I'll be feeling better emotionally. And we will investigate disability some more. And I'm hoping that some folks will come on and have questions for me. But if you just want to be here and hang out with me, that's great. I don't mind that. So just whatever y'all want to do is fine with me. This is Granny Handicap, wishing you a pleasant weekend, and I'm going to go play some Merge Dragons because they've got an event this weekend. Talk to you Monday. Same time, same station. This is Granny Handicap, aka Dennis Cole, wishing you a pleasant evening. Good night.